Welcome, everyone, to S13. I'm Renee Sieber. I am your chair for this session. We have two very different papers in this session. We've got two, which means we'll have a lot of time. But Pierre, don't go over time. We'll have a lot of time to talk about the two papers. Uh, Pierre's going to talk about subverting effectiveness and what did you say here? The imperative of efficiency. I am so intrigued by that concept. Plus, you're acknowledging the role of labor laws and unions, I think is a really important part of the conversation that we should be having at pairs. So with that, please take it away, Pierre.
All right, I will do my best to not go over time, but that proves to be a very, very tricky task for me. So, hi everyone, my name is Pierre Noro. You've perhaps heard me earlier today because I was chairing a couple of panels and also moderating the one with UNESCO. I am a lecturer at Sciences Po University and at Université Paris-Cité, where I teach mostly about digital ethics and digital governance. And this presentation is meant to be an intersection between political economy and a little feedback based on my practice working as a consultant for various types of organizations to set up participatory councils regarding AI usage in those organizations. And it starts with a very kind of simple. It starts with a kind of simple question, but to which I felt like we needed to go to the bottom of it. That is, why do we even need participatory approaches to AI so bad? There are plenty of technologies in which the regulation of technology actually only vaguely involved the greater public, mostly because the knowledge distribution regarding those technologies was heavily concentrated, and also because governments put pressure on businesses in order for those regulations to be adopted. But we need participatory approaches to AI because the odds are stacked against us and against civil society. And I'm going to try to illustrate this by explaining a little bit the political economic of AI to start with. And I want to start by using the referential of Karl Polanyi, who is a magnificent anthropologist and economist who wrote in 1944 a fantastic book called The Great Transformation, in which he describes the double movement. And the double movement is this idea that liberal societies are in equilibrium when there are three poles of powers that balance each other: government, businesses, and civil society. Right, obviously, civil society provides the workforce to businesses in exchange for businesses to create value that is redistributed by the government. Government that is elected by civil society acts as a balance of power by regulating businesses. Now, because of several economic factors that I won't have the time to go into in details, but mostly public debt and climate change as they were identified by the World Bank, we are in a moment in which the Fordist order, which is the name that Polanyi gave to this equilibrium, is broken. It is broken mostly because we're seeing lackluster growth. So for 2025 at the global level, it was 2.6%. According to the World Bank, the past decade between 2020 and 2025 was the slowest growth in the past 30 years. And when growth slows down, ultimately there is less redistribution and government's ability to regulate businesses decreases. You can add to this a public debt crisis, and you can see why there are greater pressures on civil society and businesses, which tends to place businesses in a position of power in the economy, at least according to Polanyi. Now, AI companies arrive and are proposed to fix it. They really represent a boon for nation states, because in this period of globally lackluster growth, they, on the short terms, offer they produce GDP growth, right? The AI boom comes with a lot of spending for IT equipment, data center building, which significantly contributed to GDP growth, at least in the US for the past years. So according to, it's more than a third of the total GDP growth in 2025, based on the analysis of the Federal Reserve of St. Louis. AI technologies can also afford to do this because there are positive feedback loops with other aspects of the economy, and especially chip manufacturers. I invite you to check out the genius work, the great work of Gauthier Roussil on this that he published last year. And so in a world of limited resources where climate change is already having tremendous cost on the economy, and where margins of actions, public actions are limited due to unprecedented level of public debt, the levers to spur growth are limited, right? Either you increase the extraction of natural resources, but that normally you're constrained by environmental commitments, or you capture the resources of other nations, and we're seeing that some nations are more than willing to start doing this, or you bet that AI will lead to efficiency gains and productivity gains across your economy. Of course, this does not come for free. All of those promises are for now virtual, but the AI ecosystem is having some very real impact on climate change itself, on public debt, and for now, this represents for states the only hope to maintain an economic status quo. There are some great works by some Canadian friends, Mr. Chartier-Edwards, Grenier, and Jonathan Roberge, who work really on this alignment between AI private interest and the Canadian state. I invite you to check out that work. But that also places AI companies and businesses in a position of strength in which they can try to force feed AI system to us, whether we like it or not. There was a great review on this of the AI position in France by Beignon, Thibault, and Maudet. Same thing, go check out their work. This is further reinforced by a general culture of techno-solutionism, as described by Morozov in 2013, and a cult of effectiveness, which is the term that I decided to reuse, which was really centered to the work of Marcello Vitali Rossetti, a philosopher based in Quebec. So this, of course, creates resistance. It's really the reason why we need to amplify participatory practices of AI, because it is generally unreasonable to expect governments to regulate profit-oriented AI actors, even in the application of existing norms. And it's really an uphill battle because there are asymmetries of knowledge, there are asymmetries of access to institutions and justice, even when there is regulation. Look at the implementation of the AI Act right now. And it compounds to geographical injustice with colonial and post-colonial economies in the Global South that tends to have less ability to act against, to resist AI companies. So we must flip the logic of efficiency on his hand. And why that? In order to harness organizations to give us the resources for social dialogue. And why will they do that? Well, because we actually have no proof that AI systems increase economic productivity. I'm just going to jump through this real quick because I see that time is flying. And we have a bunch of research that explore how AI systems are impacting the productivity across different fields of labor. And generally, most of the surveys shows that most of companies do not observe a positive return of investment on generative AI, and that developers tend to work slower, and that AI systems are still far from being able to automatize projects that are being placed online on freelancing platforms. And at the macroeconomic level, Darnès and Morlou, the Nobel Prize Award of Economics, estimated that the global productivity increase over the next 10 years that should be brought by AI would be 0.53%. So it's extremely slow. This does not mean that AI will never increase productivity, or that doesn't do it today in some fields. But at least there is an argument to say that if organization wants AI deployments to be somewhat efficient, they need participatory practices, right? I think this was already well covered in previous aspects of the talk today, so I'm actually going to jump very, very quickly through it. But basically, organizations get a lot of employees and civil society in those participatory approaches, and while employees give legitimacy and transfer knowledge to organizations in order to design and deploy AI systems, this can also come with resources transfer. Basically, we need to ask organizations to pay to help experts join in on participatory AI practices, and it's a good deal. Just look at what happened in the city of Amsterdam. They gave up a big public project in which they invested more than €500,000 over 5 years of development, and they gave it up because of the public pressure part of their participatory approach. So you might consider this a failure, but 4 years before, the Tuslagen affair, a big scandal around another cost-cutting algorithm in the Dutch context, led to catastrophic damage onto families, more than €500 million of litigation, and the resignation of the entire government. So participation is really a good deal for organization, and it is time that we start marketing it that way. That being said, there is not a one-size-fits-all when it comes to frameworks, and I want to finish this by a comparison of different participatory frameworks when it comes to how well adapted they are for social bargaining. So the low-hanging fruits are really acculturation games. Those are mainly designed to help share individual experience, build foundational knowledge, and legitimize participation from all stakeholders. So a few examples here. The European Trade Union Institute has a pretty thorough AI canvas that was created in 2023. Same 1 year after in France, the Conseil National du Numérique and a group of CSOs created Café AI on one side and Bataille de l'IA on the other side. I'm just jumping forwards to frameworks that are more thorough and that you might hear about. So more general frameworks, such as PI, the People AI Guidebook from Google, and the Business for Social Responsibility guidebooks. So here you see that some of them just skip altogether pedagogical resources because they do not address impacted stakeholders. They really focus on the methodology for participation. But because they are really meant for management, they really elude every aspect of social collective bargaining and social dialogue. Now,
Pierre, just to let you know, you're 2 minutes over 10 minutes.
I'm already 2 minutes of that. Okay, I'm taking 1 minute.
You're the king. You're a major organizer of the conference, so you be the judge.
This would be very out of place in a participatory AI research and practice conference for me to abuse of my privileges. So let's stick to the same rules for everyone. I'm just wrapping with this typology and hoping that the Q&A will allow me to run through the 10 other slides that I had for you. So. But this is really essential, and you might not have heard about those 3 resources that were created by either CSOs or jointly CSOs and unions. So DLEI and Labor AI and the European Center for Nonprofits for Not-for-Profit Law, both 3 created resources and a general framework for participatory AI practices. What's interesting is that they created it not for management of organizations that are willing to do it, they created it for employees and civil society actors and activists. And they lean very heavily on unions, on rights, and on laws in order to do this. What's also particular is that they come with some standardized forms and evaluations. And let me remind you, AI systems tend to be to not prove. There are no hard science-based evidence of the increase in productivity associated with the use of those AI systems. So I find those tools that allow for standardized evaluation of the effectiveness and the impact of the deployment of those AI systems particularly important. So yeah, there is a complete table that you will be able to explore later. Those slides will be shared on the Discord. Obviously, I'm speaking from a very, very privileged area in which unions are still relevant. They are suffering, but they have some power. And there are some mainstreaming strategies, and especially we need to push for ILO and other international organizations, the International Labour Organization, to standardize those kind of practices. This is a pretty unique historical opportunity in which there is actually a beginning of convergence between the economic interest of those organizations and participatory approaches that would allow us to rebalance the power relationship. I have a couple of takeaways, but I guess all of those can be inferred from the rest of my presentation. So we'll stop eating the clock and leave it there for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Pierre. So let's move on to Indira, and we'll have plenty of time for questions.
Sure. Great. I hope you're able to see my screen. Hi, everyone. My name is Indira. I'm a PhD student in Political Science Department at Purdue University. I'm excited to present my study today on translating AI literacy into public participation in AI policy. This is a collaborative work with my advisor, Professor Daniel Schiff. I thank you for the opportunity of presenting this study today and look forward to your questions going forward and feedback. So AI policy making in the United States is in the agenda setting phase and mostly expert dominated. Currently, public participation in AI policy making is low, and also the AI literacy of citizens is relatively low. A study conducted by DiCario and Ezzioni in 2021 showed how only 16% of United States citizens were able to score over 60% in an AI factual test. To address this concern and to improve AI literacy among citizens, several governments and private tech companies and civil society organizations are launching AI literacy programs. Finland is trailblazing this effort by through its Elements of AI program that was launched back in May 2018. The United States issued a presidential executive order in April 2025 that called for advancing artificial intelligence education amongst the American youth. While AI literacy programs increase student education, or at least their objective or goal is to increase student education or citizen awareness by providing them more information about AI, the implications of such programs on actual citizen engagement in policymaking is under-researched. Public participation is important for making AI governance democratic and for increasing legitimacy, accountability, and responsiveness in AI policymaking. So the objective of the study is to understand the effects of whether informing citizens about AI would increase their public participation or at least willingness to participate in AI policymaking. So firstly, let's understand what is AI literacy. AI literacy can be understood as a set of competencies that enable individuals to critically understand, use, and evaluate AI. For this study, we adopt Long and McGill's framework of AI literacy. They list 17 competencies to define AI literacy. So we group these competencies into two types. One is technical competency. The second category is socio-ethical competency. By technical competency, we refer to this understanding of how AI works. Technical competencies essentially focus on the design and development of AI. Socio-ethical competencies, on the other hand, is more about understanding what are the implications of AI on individuals and society, and they focus on the benefits and risks associated with AI. Grouping these competencies as technical and socio-ethical helps us to modularize the broader set of skills into coherent groups, which aim to facilitate specific sets of understanding for citizens who are undertaking these AI literacy programs. In terms of the outcome measure, which is political participation, we again group them into two types of participation. The first being macro level participation, which is more like formal and collective avenues of participation through voting or administrative means like contacting an elected representative, or civic means like joining a local public meeting or workshop to understand more about AI. In terms of micro participation, micro participation is more about understanding how individual actions in our everyday life have political consequences. This framework is well developed in sustainability literature, and we have adopted this framework from there into AI governance literature. And we look at different avenues of micro participation like lifestyle politics or political consumerism, where users choose or boycott a product or service based on the company's AI ethical practices, and digital network participation, which is more about sharing information around AI policy on social media with networks. So we identify 4 theoretical mechanisms in terms of how AI literacy affects public participation in policy making. So by understanding the technical and socio-ethical competencies of AI, the knowledge and awareness around AI increases, which further increases the confidence of engaging with AI and using it. We term this as AI self-efficacy. Knowing more about AI could increase or decrease trust. It could increase trust because people might believe in its efficiency and innovation, and hence they want to, integrate AI in their everyday life. It could also decrease trust in AI because there are a lot of risks and harms associated with AI, which people are concerned about. And knowing more about these risks and harms would decrease their trust, which in turn would increase or decrease participation in AI policymaking. Again, knowing more about AI, like increased knowledge about AI, especially socio-ethical competencies, would increase perceived egotropic relevance of AI. By perceived egotropic relevance, what we mean here is having an understanding of the direct impact of AI on our everyday life. And also, it would have like a perceived sociotropic relevance, which is having an understanding about how AI affects society at large, and developing this sense of civic responsibility towards addressing that, which in turn increases willingness to participate or actual participation in AI policymaking. Now, baseline AI literacy levels also have an influence about how much knowledge we are able to consume about AI, and that acts as a moderator in this theoretical pathway. So we essentially test 2 hypotheses. The first being, when individuals participate in AI literacy programs, they show an increased participation in AI policymaking. The second hypothesis being, having knowledge about both technical as well as socio-ethical competencies would show greater participation as compared to being informed about only technical or only socio-ethical competencies. Going forward, we would also like to add more exploratory hypotheses into these, into this set, like how whether AI literacy is expected to increase more micro participation as compared to macro participation, or vice versa. So we employ an online survey experiment to test these hypotheses. So what we did was we randomly, in this online survey experimental setup, we randomly assigned participants into 5 groups, 3 treatment groups and 2 control groups. In treatment group, one of the groups just watched AI literacy video focused on technical competency. The second group watched AI literacy video focused on socio-ethical competency. And the third group watched a video that combined both technical as well as socio-ethical competency. In terms of control group, the pure control group did not watch any video. The neutral control group did watch a video on 3D printing, which is an alternative emerging technology, but with not as much of a policy focus as AI. The idea of having this neutral control group is to control for the fact that the mere watching of the video does not influence participation amongst participants. So this is the experimental design. Due to paucity of time, I'm just not going to play the video right now, but in the discussion, would be happy to play the video if required. In terms of study timelines, we conducted the first pilot of the study back in May 2025 in through Kernan Experimental Social Science Lab at Purdue, where we recruited undergraduate students as participants in the study. Based on the insights from the first pilot, we updated the survey questions, videos, as well as outcome measures. We recently conducted a second round of pilot on Prolific, which was conducted in January 2026. The findings I'm going to share today is based on the data collected through this pilot. Again, this is a very small sample size, and eventually the main study would have a larger sample of participants. So in terms of post-treatment literacy scores that we did see amongst the participants, from the chart on the left side, we see that the technical AI literacy scores improved for those in the technical treatment group as well as the combined treatment group. And the socio-ethical scores on the right side improved for participants in the socio-ethical group and the combined literacy group. So these charts are suggestive that the video is achieving what it is intended to achieve. That is, technical competency is showing an increase in scores in technical and combined group, whereas socio-ethical competencies are increased in socio-ethical and combined group and not in the other groups. In terms of understanding whether watching these AI literacy videos actually had any impact on or effect on public participation, we actually see null results. Like watching AI literacy videos did not show any effect on improving public participation. The strongest predictor was internal political efficacy of the participants, which is a belief that they have the competency of understanding politics and willingness to participate more. That was like the strongest predictor. We also see some relationship between, say, trust in AI and participation, but it's a negative association, like decreased trust. The less I trust in AI, the more I'm willing to participate in AI. So overall, we see null results and internal efficacy being the strongest predictor of participation. Similarly, when we looked at participation amongst those who actually showed an increase in AI literacy, after watching the video, again, we did not see any effect of increased AI literacy on participation, and internal political efficacy was the strongest predictor of participation. We also use structural equation modeling to identify the mediation effects. As we talked previously in the theoretical mechanisms, we have 4 mediators through which AI literacy affects participation. If you look at panel A, we see that AI literacy does not affect any of these mediators except socio-ethical competencies having moderately significant effect on trust in AI. That is, watching socio-ethical video actually improved or increased trust in AI. If you look at panel B, then we do see some association between AI self-efficacy, egotropic relevance, and sociotropic relevance. positively correlated with participation, although these are moderately significant. Again, we don't see any indirect effects between these mediators and political participation. So finally, in terms of key takeaways from the study, the videos significantly increase technical competencies while increasing socio-ethical competencies to a lesser degree. However, we see that neither type of these literacies meaningfully improve either macro participation or micro participation. It is the extent limitations of internal and external political efficacy that preclude the effects of AI literacy on participation, as we see that the internal political efficacy is the strongest predictor of political participation. So what does this mean in terms of political implication, in terms of policy implications? So we have several large-scale AI literacy programs, and they mostly focus on technical competencies to prepare the workforce to, to adapt to AI in their jobs, etc. But that alone might not be sufficient to overcome the political capacity deficits and democratize AI governance. We need to think out of the box to develop capacity building mechanisms which would meaningfully increase public participation. So that's it. Thank you, everyone, and looking forward to your feedback.
Wow, that was awesome. I don't see any questions in the chat, but I have prepared questions. So, I think this is a question for the Global South, but I'm asking you, Pierre. Can participation function in an era of fear and greed? Because so much of your ecosystem is driven by fear and greed. And the reason why I preface that with the Global South, because of course, we in the Global North have not been subject to so much fear and greed as the Global South is. So, and exogenous big tech. So, what do you think?
Thank you so much. And now for yet another presentation in the presentation. No, I'm kidding. Um, the answer is probably less so. So the alignment of incentives that I see based on this very high level and admittedly like very caricatural political economy, but political economy is modelization, and models are caricature of reality. So this alignment that organizations, if they want their money to be well invested when they pay for AI systems, actually should pay for participatory, for the recurring and institutionalized participatory practices, is clearly less evident in Global South because of extractive economies and the fact that the power relationship is even more disbalanced in economies where the contribution to the AI life cycle is very much upstream, whether it is extraction of primary resources or data labeling. It is not without hope, and I think that a lot of the effort that needs to be made in our community of practice is in resourcing, supporting unions of click workers in Global South countries, and attempts to coordinate even for workers in the extractive industries, in the extraction industry, sorry. But yeah, I wanted to just give the example of in Kenya, there is an ongoing class action lawsuit against Meta of a group of 185 Kenyan content moderators led by attorney Mercy Mutemi. Actually, some of the people from the Africa panel contributed to that effort. And so strategies that promote the roles of union here are also strategies that can create synergies for unions elsewhere. And for sure, if we accept that unions should remain weak and relatively unsupported by civil society in the Global North, it's going to be very hard to make Global North companies accountable towards unions in the Global South.
Thank you. I have many more questions for you, but I will go to Indira and ask her, what if AI literacy decreases trust? And I think that it's easy to think about AI literacy in the abstract as as in, hey, our country would benefit if we had more AI being adopted in companies. But when their job gets eliminated, or when a data center is parked right next door to their neighborhood, they might not be so sanguine about AI anymore and their participation. So you're assuming the participation, maybe you're not, is constructive and good, but it could be quite negative. And the public could be quite distrustful as a result of going through Finland's elements of AI.
No, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I think the assumption we are working with is that participation is good because, and we are looking at participation in AI governance or policy making specifically for this study, and especially increasing public participation because currently there's a power asymmetry, especially in policy making in terms of the investments or the efforts undertaken by industry to influence policy makers, and the public participation is really, really low. So, how can we increase public participation? So, and the idea is to make AI governance democratic. One of the means is to have more public participation. So, from that approach or from that perspective, I believe we are working with the assumption that participation is important, public participation. But again, here there are different definitions of participation. So how we define participation is greater engagement of public in democratic process or through these democratic avenues in policy making. But I think a lot of AI literacy initiatives of especially by the technology companies and even several government modules, we mapped several AI literacy modules and we saw that all of these, the content in all of these AI literacy programs was heavily technically skewed. It was all about like machine learning, supervised, unsupervised learning. And there is a gap in terms of absence of looking at socio-ethical competencies or even civic literacy. I believe, I think one of the strong takeaways of the study would be to integrate civic literacy and civic competencies along with AI literacy because AI literacy in itself would not be sufficient to increase participation among citizens.
Yeah, I agree 100%. When I said the participation could be bad, it, by that I mean not what the government wants to hear.
Mm, right.
And you being in an incredibly polarized country, um, you can see where the concept of dark participation emerges. Um, let's see, how much time do I have? Oh, I have no time. Uh, so, um,
I don't know if Anna started on time as well. So perhaps we can take, sorry, Anna, so who's chairing the session in the B room. I guess, Renee, if you want to, you know, extend the Q&A while we wait for the people from the Zoom room B to join back the Zoom room A, that works fine. And we'll start the closing plenary as soon as they arrive.
okay, so I will, since I see no other questions in the chat. Oh, great. You're still labeled as ASTC room 2, but go
I
ahead.
know. Sorry about that. For some reason, I wasn't able to change my name. But so I'm Eve Klein. It's very, very nice to be here. Indira, I want to ask a question of you. Thank you so, so much. That was really fascinating. I work, as my profile picture showed, I work with science museums and science centers around the world. And so we see a lot, we have a lot of conversations about this like knowledge action gap, just like you're describing. But I'm curious, you started to touch on this at the end, but do you have thoughts about what kinds of interventions might actually shift participation? Like social norming or removing friction points or like identity-based framing. We're exploring that a lot, and I'm really interested in your thoughts on that too.
No, that's a great question. And currently, that's something we are also thinking about a lot. Yeah, I strongly believe that thinking about like civic literacy, and it's really, I don't know, sad and ironic that in 2026 we are talking about, civic literacy, democracy again. But I think just going back to the basics, I would say, so, like focusing on civic literacy and integrating civic competencies and civic literacy, just like sharing information and talking about it would definitely be one means. Also, I believe, again, depending on the country's context, as well as different subgroups, like based on income or ideology, the participation and the information acceptance also kind of changes. We did see in our own study how polarizing socio-ethical competency video was, because we did get we had an open-ended question where they could share what they understood from the video, and some of them called it like very woke, and some of them called it extremely, pro AI and anti AI. We had like, it was very polarizing, but we tried to keep the content extremely neutral and educative across all the videos. So it's just that I believe, I just feel like information asymmetry is there in AI governance, and that needs to be brought down, and sharing more information and talking more about this by integrating civic competency would be helpful.
If I may just very quickly contribute to that conversation as well. So one of the organizations that I worked with is a big environmental advocacy organization in France, actually an NGO that sued and won a trial against the French state for climatic inaction. And part of the team, part of the staff was using AI, part of it was not using AI, and most of the people were not using AI because of the assumed environmental costs. And so in this case, having an intervention of giving them a literature review on what do we know about the environmental impact of AI, and then trying to make a cost-benefit analysis between this, the reputational risks, the actual environmental harms, and the efficiency gains. So because for instance, some of them are lawyers, and they need to understand decisions that have been made in other countries in languages that they do not understand. And so summarization using AI in this case is really a tool that can have a very, very positive effect on their productivity. And so my answer is the kind of interventions that Indira attempted are extremely difficult, also because they are not really situated in a specific practice, which is also a reason why I really advocate for participatory approaches within organizations. An organization, because you already have some sort of a skin in the game and some form of commonality of usage, in which you have very, very different stakeholders, but they share a common reality and a set of goals that can be clearly identified, and in which this kind of collective decision making helps people position themselves, right? Like in this kind of frameworks, the lack of information, providing information that is filling this void actually leads to a real form of empowerment. Whereas for general public intervention, it can have great effects, right? And I really believe in it. Some of the interventions that I presented, such as Caféia in France, are really open to anyone. And they already help with myth busting around AI and things like that, but they do not generate a lot of legitimacy. And in part also because there is not really this funnel towards concrete action. Whereas in organizations, generally, the output is really clear, right? Are we going to use this tool or not? And do we allow it internally or not? Do we exclude it? So yeah, that would be my answer. The situatedness really helps. Especially if you have to make decision on which intervention to make with limited resources, trying those kind of open interventions can be very, very tricky, whereas interventions within organizations where you see there are already controversies can really, really bring some positive and measurable outcomes.
Thank you both. Really appreciate that.